Hi guys, and welcome back to the Aspiring Home Cook. My name is Trisha, and in today's video we're going to do something a little different. I'm participating in a budget grocery haul challenge. This week I've attempted to do my groceries at $20 a head. Since I shop and cook for two, that's my husband and I've kept it down to just under $40, that's $20 a head. And this includes breakfast, lunch and dinner. Will we be eating the same thing all through the week? We're going to use similar ingredients through a few of the recipes, but I'm hoping to have a good amount of variety through the week. This may not be the most balanced diet. However, I'm here to show you that even with limited resources, you can actually get through the week with lots of delicious food on your table. I know a lot of us are doing it tough at the moment, whether you're trying to save up to meet your financial goals, whether your job situation has changed over the last year, or whether you're just trying to make those dollars go the extra mile. I hope you'll be able to take some tips from today's video and use that in a way that suits you. Now, if you've seen a few of my grocery hauls in the past, I usually tend to shop at a couple of different stores. I mainly shop at my greengrocer for my fresh produce, and then I either pop into COLES or Aldi or Woolies depending on what I'm looking for. Today I've kept it simple. I've done all my shopping at COLES because I've had a lot of you come back and tell me that you don't have access to your local greengrocer, or the prices at your local greengrocer aren't always the best. So to make it accessible to all, because I know most of us here in Australia will have access to COLES or something similar, I've done all of my shopping at COLES, and let me now take you through what I've got. This is what the entire lot looks like. I'll take you through the frozen bits first so that I can pop those in the freezer. I've picked up some strawberry slices. Even though strawberries are pretty much in season at the moment, the fresh ones did not look as good at my local COLES. And I've got a packet of snap frozen mixed vegetables. What I also picked up from the frozen fruit section is some frozen chopped spinach. While we're talking about fruit and veg, I might as well take you through the rest of my produce. I picked up a bag of onions because as you know, I use onions in a lot of my cooking. And when you're trying to save those bucks on a few other things, or for a few other things, onions will add a lot of flavor to your food. If your COLES or your local store carries an imperfect range, you'll get an even better value. I paid $2.50 for that bag of onions. Usually that's what I'd pay for a little bag of a kilo of onions. This is a little 1.5 kilo bag for the exact same price. Now, potatoes. You can't go wrong with having a couple of potatoes if possible. Now, this one's going to be a little bit controversial. I ended up paying $3 for a sleeve of coriander. We're going to use this for a few of our recipes. Now, if you don't like coriander, leave them out. You can probably fit in some other fresh fruit and veg for that price. Got myself a nice bunch of spring onions. We've got some mushrooms. Now, a lot of the times you'll find that the little cup or button mushrooms are a lot cheaper. However, today these flat mushrooms were on special and they were cheaper than the little cup or button ones. Moving on, I was very fortunate today. Tomatoes were in an absolute steal at COLES, so I picked up a few. I got myself some bananas. I picked up one green capsicum. I picked up one lime. Moving on to my dry goods, I picked up a few things this week. I got myself a bag of the COLES long grain white rice. I've got a bag of oats. I picked up a bag of spiral pasta. Got myself some red split lentils. 1 can of coconut milk. This is one of the very few varieties available in store, at least locally to me, that does not have thickeners or emulsifiers or things like that. The ingredient list is just plain coconut extract and water, and that's one of the reasons I picked these up. I picked up a can of COLES black bean, a jar of passata, and on special this week was this brand of organic oat milk. So 42 meals in under $40. Is it possible? Stay tuned and I'll take you through what we do with all of these ingredients through the week for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Now, for this challenge, I've not taken into consideration the cost of a few really basic pantry staples like oil, salt and pepper and spices. For breakfast this week, we're going to have oatmeal, and I'll show you how to change it up so that you keep things interesting. Like you can see, I'm almost out of oatmeal here. I'm just going to top up my container with the packet that we just bought. To make my oatmeal porridge in the morning, I'm going to start off with 1 cup of rolled oats. This makes breakfast for the two of us. You can adjust this amount to suit your needs. To this, I add a pinch of salt, 2 cups of water. This is just regular water at room temperature, and a tiny splash of plant milk. I use whatever plant milk I have on hand that week, about a 1/4 cup or thereabouts. I find this adds a nice creaminess to the oatmeal and enhances the overall taste. Then simply turn the heat on, give this a good stir from time to time. As it thickens, you'll have to stir it more frequently, and cook this till it's done to the level of consistency that you enjoy. I like my oatmeal to be nice, thick and creamy, but at the same time I don't like it too dry. So I just let everything come to a boil and then let it simmer off for a little bit till it's nice and thick and creamy. Then you simply portion that out between 2 serving bowls. Now on some days I will serve it up with a few of those frozen sliced strawberries. Sprinkle on a little sweetener of your choice to taste, and you can easily enjoy this for a couple of days through the week. To switch things up, on some days I'll add a light sprinkling of cinnamon powder. This is not essential, but it adds a nice flavor to the oatmeal. A very light sprinkling of nutmeg powder. This stuff is potent, so you want to go easy on it. But again, you can use as much as you'd like or as little as you'd like. And I'm going to top it off with some sliced fresh banana. The banana adds a nice flavor and a little sweetness to the porridge. However, you can also add some additional sweetener of your choice. For our third variation this week, what I've done is I've already served out that oatmeal among 2 bowls, and in that same vessel I'm going to put in a few of those frozen strawberry slices. I'm going to sprinkle a little sugar over the top. You can use any sweetener of your choice, and let this cook through for a couple of minutes till it reaches a nice jammy consistency. Then simply spoon that over your oatmeal. If it's not sweet enough for you, you can adjust the sweetness to suit your liking, and sit down and enjoy your nice, healthy, warm, nourishing bowl of porridge. This is by far my favorite way out of all the 3 that I've shared with you today. And like you can see, this adds a nice variety to our week of oatmeal porridge breakfasts. With breakfast done, we're going to move on to the meals. The way I've meal planned for the week is that I'm going to make 1 recipe to feed the 2 of us across 2 meals. So that would mean 4 portions out of each meal. For day 1, I'm going to make a quick and easy pasta with vegetables in some beautiful red tomato sauce. For this, I'm going to start off by bringing a large pot of water to the boil and adding some salt. To be generous with the salt, I add almost 1.5 teaspoons of salt to the pot. Add in the pasta. Now for this particular recipe, I'm actually going to cook my pasta in 2 separate batches. I'll cook just as much as we need for lunch, and then for dinner I'll boil up a fresh batch. You don't have to do that. You can just cook up 1 large batch of pasta, reheat the leftovers when you intend serving it. Now while my pasta is cooking, I'm actually going to start cooking up my sauce as well. In a pan, I've got some olive oil. I'm going to add in about half a small onion that I've chopped up. Now, while this may not be typical of a pasta sauce, I find that when you're cooking with limited ingredients, onion adds a lot of flavor to a lot of different recipes. I've got the heat on a medium, and we're just going to cook up the onions till they soften a little bit. You don't want to add any color as such to the onions. To this, I'm going to add about 1/3 of my green capsicum that I've chopped up. Now, once the capsicum has softened just a tiny bit, I'm going to add some of those frozen veggies into the pan. Now, these vegetables don't require a lot of cooking, so I'm just going to start by stirring that through just so that they mix in with that onion and capsicum. To this, I'm going to add a little bit of our frozen spinach as well to bump up the number of veggies. Stir that through. And then we're going to start adding our seasonings. I'm going to start off by adding about 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going to throw in a little bit of red chili flakes. You can add this to taste. And I'm going to use some dried mixed herbs. I'm going to use a couple of big generous pinches of mixed herbs. Lastly, a good crack of black pepper, and stir everything through well. Now we're going to add some of that passata. I've added about half of that bottle. It's a 700-gram bottle of passata, and I've used about half of that. I'm going to stir that through the veggies, season it with a little salt to taste, And just to balance out all the flavors, I'm going to add a little bit of some sugar. Now to this, to loosen that sauce, I'm just going to add a touch of water from a recently boiled kettle. You can also use a little stock if you'd like, but water is good enough. Stir that through and just let it warm through and simmer for a few minutes or till that tomato sauce cooks through. Check for seasoning and adjust as required. Give it one final stir and your pasta sauce is ready to serve. By now, your pasta should have cooked through as well, so we're ready to plate up. I like to mix some of the sauce through the pasta and then just top up with a little more sauce after I've served up. Finish off with a final grate of some black pepper. You can also sprinkle some nutritional yeast if you've got some on hand. That would really bump this up. But even in itself, this is a really tasty meal. Welcome to day 2. Today we're making a mushroom pulao or a pilaf. And we're also going to be making some lentil patties or cutlets. I'm going to make a mini version today. I'm going to start off with 1 cup of red lentils. This is just split and hulled red lentil, also called masoor dal. And I'm going to start off by rinsing them through some fresh water a few times till that water runs clear, and then soak it in some water at room temperature. This needs to soak for about an hour or so, up to 2 hours. Once you're ready to start making those patties, we're going to throw 1 small onion that I've just chopped into slightly smaller pieces into my food processor. I'm doing this because I want the onion chopped really fine. You can skip this and just simply chop the onion by hand if you'd like. This is just quicker and easier. You still want little pieces and not a paste. Once that's chopped up, take the onions out into a little bowl, drain all of the water from the lentils and add that to your food processor. I'm going to blitz this till it is a coarse paste. You don't want it to be too runny, but for the most part, the lentils need to be broken down. When you're done, it should look something like this. Empty the lentils out into the same bowl with the onions. And to that, I'm going to add a little bit of chopped fresh coriander. Both the leaves and the stalks work well. About a couple of tablespoons of coriander will add a nice flavor to the patties. Now we're going to start adding our seasonings. I'm going to put in a little salt to taste, a sprinkling of red chili flakes, a teaspoon of garlic powder, half to 1 teaspoon of any mild red chili powder. I'm using Kashmiri chili powder because that's usually what I tend to have on hand. A little bit of some black pepper. You can either use black pepper powder or some freshly cracked black pepper. And then with clean hands, go ahead and give this all a good mix. It should come together fairly well. It will be a slightly wet mix like you can see here, but it should hold shape really well like this. If it isn't, feel free to add a spoonful of flour of some sort or breadcrumbs, or if you don't have any of that, use a spoonful of that oats, pop that into a little spice grinder or a dry grinder, grind that to a powder and add it here. It'll help absorb some of that moisture. Then simply heat up a pan, add a light drizzle of oil, shape that mix into little patties. I like to make these a little on the smaller side so that they hold their shape better and they turn or flip easier. And because they're slightly on the thinner side, they cook through easily as well. And you're simply going to fry these off for a few minutes on each side and continue doing this till all of that mix is used up. It does tend to release a little moisture as it stands, so make sure you fry the whole lot off at one go. You can store these cutlets once they've completely cooled in an airtight container in the fridge for about 3 to 4 days. I got about 16 pieces from this batch. With that done, we're going to move on to our mushroom rice or the mushroom pulao. Now I've got a little vessel on medium heat. Into that, I'm just going to add a little splash of olive oil and about a spoonful of butter. I'm using a plant-based version here. If you don't have butter on hand, you can still make this rice using just the olive oil, or for that matter, any oil of your choice. I find that the butter adds a nice flavor to the rice. Once that butter has melted, I'm going to add in about half a large onion, finely chopped, or 1 slightly smaller onion, finely chopped. Stir that well, and we're going to saute this till those onions have started turning translucent and have softened a little. To this, I'm then going to add some chopped mushrooms. I've used most of the mushrooms that I've bought. I've just kept aside 2 of these flat mushrooms for use in a different recipe. If you're using the little button mushrooms or the cup mushrooms, keep about 4 to 5 of them aside and chop up the rest, add them to the pot. And you're going to make sure that they've spread out a little, like I'm doing right here. And you're going to leave these to cook off for a little while before you can start stirring them through. Once the mushrooms start developing a little color, you can just flip one over to check. You can then start stirring them through the onions. And I'm going to cook these till these mushrooms turn a slightly darker brown, because that's when they get a nice meaty texture to them. Once the mushrooms have mostly browned, add in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Stir that through and then add in your rice. I'm making enough for 4 adult portions for my husband and I. We'll have this over lunch and dinner. I'm using about 1/3 of a cup per portion. So this is 1 1/3 of a cup of rice. Again, you can adjust the amount of rice to suit your needs. I've just washed the rice out a few times in cold running water and drained off all the water before adding it to the pot. Gently stir the rice and the mushrooms around and add in some chicken stock. I'm just using some stock powder that I have in my pantry at all times, mixed in with some water. If you don't have stock, you can just use plain water at room temperature as well. I use 1 portion of rice to 2 portions of water. That's the ratio I keep, and that works well for me. Season with a little salt and some pepper to taste. And when it comes to a boil, simply pop a lid on and let this cook down till all of that liquid has been absorbed by the rice. The timing here will differ depending on the rice that you're using. So just go by eye on this. Once all of that liquid has been absorbed, I'm just doing this to show you here, but when you're satisfied that all of the water has been absorbed, keep the lid on, don't take it off, and take the entire pot off the heat. Let it stand for about 5 minutes just for that rice to complete absorbing any liquid that's in there. This also helps the rice fluff up really well. Once the rice has rested, use a fork to loosen it up, and all served up, here's what it looks like. I've just used some sriracha over my lentil patties and sprinkled a little bit of chopped coriander over the rice. We're now at day 3. Today we're going to whip up a really quick and easy vegetable curry. I'm just using some of the frozen mixed vegetables, and I'm going to use 1 of the potatoes that we bought. Simply peel and chop that potato down into similar sized pieces like your vegetable assortment. And I'm going to chop 1 small onion into fine dices. If your onion's on the larger side, simply just use half. Start off by heating a little oil in a vessel, about a spoonful will do. To this, add your chopped onion. Stir that through, and you're going to fry this off till the onion softens and starts developing a little color around the edges. Then we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, about half a teaspoon of ginger powder, half a teaspoon of cumin powder, 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric powder, half a teaspoon of any mild red chili powder, I'm using Kashmiri chili powder, and 1 1/2 teaspoon of coriander powder. Stir that through. Remember to keep your heat at a low or a medium low at this point so that the spices don't burn. And add about a 1/4 cup of passata. Stir that through and let this spice mix cook off for about a couple of minutes on a medium heat. And then add in 1 can of coconut milk. Stir that through, and then I'm just going to add in a little bit of water to that can and swirl everything around just to make sure that I'm getting all of the coconut milk from the can. And add it to your curry. Add in your chopped potatoes. This will take the longest to cook because we're cooking this from raw. Add a little salt to taste. Stir that through and then just pop a lid on, and we're going to leave this to cook. Keep the lid slightly ajar because coconut milk has the tendency to spill over, and you're going to let this cook through till the potatoes are almost done. When the potatoes have almost cooked through, add in your frozen vegetables. Remember, these vegetables have been sitting at room temperature from the time I started putting together the curry. So they have thawed a little bit and they just need to be reheated in that curry now. To add a little more variety to the vegetables in the curry, I'm going to add a little bit of that frozen spinach in as well. Give everything a good stir and let the curry come to a boil again. Once it comes to a boil, your curry is ready. Turn the heat off, add in half a teaspoon of garam masala powder. Stir that through, check for seasoning and adjust if needed. And your gorgeous mixed vegetable curry is ready. Serve this nice and piping hot with some boiled rice or steamed rice, and you've got yourself a nice, comforting, hearty meal. Day 4 is going to be a really quick and easy, simplified version of fried rice. I've got my rice already boiled and cooled down. I'm going to use some of that frozen mixed vegetable again. And I've got a few more things chopped up. I've used up the rest of my mushrooms. I've got a little bit of the green capsicum that I've sliced. I've got about 3 to 4 spring onions and half an onion. Now at this point, I decided to switch things up just a little. I'm still going to make that fried rice, but I'm also going to make a little mushroom stir fry to serve on the side. So I've got a little pan here with a drizzle of oil, about a spoonful or so. In go the sliced mushrooms. I like to spread them in a single layer so that they develop a little bit of color. Once they've slightly browned on one side, like you can see here, flip them over. It may seem at this stage that there's not enough oil in the pan, but you really don't need to add any more. I actually like cooking the mushroom in a semi-dry pan like this. It actually enhances the texture a little. When the mushrooms have developed a nice color on both sides, all I do is just move them to the sides of the pan, add a tiny drizzle of oil, and add in that half an onion that you had sliced up. I like to separate the layers of the onion like this so that they spread evenly through the stir fry. And you're just going to saute that a little till it develops a little bit of color. And then mix that through with the mushrooms. Next, add in your sliced capsicum and stir that through. And then in goes the white portion of the spring onion that we'd chopped up earlier, about half of what we chopped up. Stir that through well, and then go in with a light sprinkling of some garlic powder. We're now going to add our sauces. I'm starting with a tablespoon of soy sauce, a light drizzle of some rice wine vinegar, about I'd say barely half a teaspoonful, and if you have some, a tablespoon of some sweet chili sauce. If you don't have sweet chili sauce, you can sprinkle a little sugar or sweetener of your choice just to balance out all the flavors in the pan. Stir that through, add in about half of the green portion of the spring onions that we chopped earlier. Give it one last stir just till those spring onion greens start heating through and just about start softening, and your stir fry is ready. For your fried rice, use a large pan. I'm using a wok. If you don't have one, even a large frying pan will do, and drizzle a little oil in it. I've chopped up about another half an onion, and I've got the rest of my spring onion greens and whites that we chopped up earlier. So I'm going to add the onion to the pan first. And you can see that both the pan and the oil are nice and hot because the minute the onion hits the pan, it starts sizzling. Stir that through well, and then add in the white portion of your spring onions to the wok. Next, add in those mixed vegetables, and then just stir them through and let that cook off for a little while till the vegetables have all heated through and cooked through. When the vegetables are ready, go in with a light sprinkling of some garlic powder. I'm going to put in about half a teaspoon or so, and I'm going to add in just about a spoonful or so of soy sauce to start off with. Next, add in your rice. This is enough rice for 4 adult portions for the 2 of us. I'm going to drizzle a little more soy sauce, about another tablespoon or so, over the top of the rice and stir everything through. You can add as much soy sauce as you'd like to have with your fried rice in this recipe. And I almost forgot, add in those spring onion greens. Ideally, I would put these in just before I added the rice, but since I forgot, no worries, we're going to add it now. Give it a good stir and let it cook off for just about a minute or so till that rawness goes off those spring onion greens. And that's what it looks like, all served up. I'm sprinkling a little sesame seeds over the stir fry just to add a little more vibrance and flavor to the dish. And just a light hint of some black pepper powder over the rice. And if you're anything like me, you're going to top everything off with a little bit of a drizzle of some sriracha sauce. Welcome to day 5, at least I think it's day 5. Today we're making a Mexican style bean stir fry to serve along with some cilantro and lime rice. I'm going to start off by getting the rice going. So into a pot I'm going to put in a little bit of oil, I'd say a tablespoon, 1 to 2 tablespoons or so. I'm making enough for 2 meals for us, so this is 4 adult portions again. Into that goes my washed and drained rice. And I'm gently going to stir all that around just to sort of saute or fry the rice in that oil. To give this rice a little extra boost of flavor, I'm going to put in about, I'd say, a 1/4 teaspoon of any mild red chili powder. I'm using Kashmiri chili powder. I'm going to make my stock in the pot today because that's what I'm cooking the rice with. I'm just going to put in enough for that stock to be twice the quantity of water. So for example, if you're using 1 cup of rice, you'd use 2 cups of stock or water. Now to this I'm going to add a little salt. Remember, your stock will also have some amount of seasoning, so adjust the amount of salt that you use accordingly. We're going to turn the heat up, bring this to a boil, and once that water begins to bubble, you're just going to pop a lid on, turn the heat down to a simmer, and let this cook off gently till all of that stock or liquid is absorbed into the rice. While my rice is cooking, I'm just going to prep everything else for my stir fry, as well as I'm going to make a little pico de gallo of sorts to go with the meal. The pico is a very simple recipe. I'm just going to start by using a thin sliver of onion like you can see here. It's not even 1/4 of a small onion because these onions are really pungent. If you're using the red onions, you can add a little more if you'd like. Chop that up finely and then place it in a little bowl. Chop up 1 tomato into little pieces and add that to the bowl with the onions. Season this with a little salt and some freshly cracked black pepper to taste. Next, I'm just going to cut a little wedge of lime and squeeze some of that lime juice in. You can add as much or as little as you'd like. Give everything a good mix, and then we're just going to leave this aside to let those flavors mingle and develop. You can always serve this straight away. However, I like for it to sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. I feel that it enhances the flavor of the salad a little more. Before we leave it to rest, I'm just going to add in a little bit of fresh coriander chopped up. And your simplified version of pico de gallo is ready. This just freshens up the meal and adds a lot of flavor to it. I'm just going to set this aside and we'll get on with our stir fry. For the stir fry, I'm going to use up 1 onion, the rest of that green capsicum, and 1 tomato. We're also going to need a little bit of that fresh coriander chopped up to finish everything off. I'm going to start off by just slicing the onions across, and then I'll cut that in half so that I've got slightly smaller pieces in there. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the capsicum. For the tomato, I'm just going to cut that up into little slices. Now, in the meanwhile, my rice has completely absorbed all of that stock or liquid in the pot. I'm just going to take a little peek to make sure that there's no extra liquid in there. Like you can see, all of that liquid is gone. So I know my rice has cooked off and cooked well. I'm going to pop the lid back on, take it off the heat, and leave it to rest for 5 to 10 minutes or till our bean stir fry comes together. For the stir fry, I've got a large pan over some medium heat, and I'm going to add in a little drizzle of oil, about a spoonful or so, and start off with the onion. Saute that for a little while, and because the pan and the oil was nice and hot, almost instantly I get some beautiful char marks on the onion. Now for the stir fry, I'd like my vegetables to have a little crunch, so I'm not going to cook them too much. I'm going to add in the capsicum and let the onion and the capsicum cook off together for a few minutes. Once the capsicum starts developing a little bit of color, I'm going to start with the seasoning. In goes 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, about 1/2 teaspoon of cumin powder, half a teaspoon of a mild red chili powder. You can also use smoked paprika here. And about a level teaspoon of dried oregano. If you've got fresh oregano, you can use some of that as well. You might just need to add a little less. For a touch of that smoky flavor, I'm going in with a little bit of smoked paprika, and everything gets a good stir to mix those spices through. Now quickly add in your tomatoes. And to prevent the spices from burning, I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons of water from time to time. This helps all the ingredients cook through, sort of steam through without the spices burning. Don't go overboard with the water because you're simply looking to deglaze the pan, not boil off all the veggies in there. Once everything has sort of cooked through to your liking, add in 1 can of black beans. I've just drained these and rinsed them through some fresh water. Drain that off as well and pop that in the pan. Now, if you feel that the stir fry is getting too dry, you can add a touch more water just to help those spices coat the beans and the vegetables too. Give it a good stir, and once the beans have heated through and most of that liquid has been absorbed, I'm still going to keep a little bit in there as sort of a sauce. Your stir fry is ready. Pop the lid on, set it aside. You're ready to serve up. Now, just before serving, we're going to finish off that rice that has been resting away. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of fresh chopped coriander on the top and squeeze some lime juice over. Now, don't go overboard with the lime. Just a little bit is enough to add just a hint of citrus to it. And gently, very gently, you're going to stir everything through. Well, the fluffing process does work a little easier with a fork instead, so I've switched to one. And that's day 5 all done for you. I've just sprinkled a little more fresh coriander on top to add a pop of color as well as flavor. We're now at day 6. If you've gotten this far, give yourself a pat on the back. It's been a long video, but we're almost at the end. For our meal today, I'm going to make some oat crepes. These are basically inspired by the Indian dosa. Now, these crepes need to be made instantly or on the spot, so only grind up as much as you need. For the 2 of us for lunch, I put in a cup of the rolled oats, and I'm just going to blitz this in my dry grinder till it becomes a nice oat powder. You can do this in a food processor as well. Add this to a large mixing bowl, season with a little salt, and we're going to turn this to a crepe or a pancake batter of sorts by gradually adding water and whisking as we go. At this stage, I've added about 1 cup of water at room temperature, and this is the consistency that I'm left with. I'm happy with this. It's not too thick like a pancake batter, but at the same time, it's not too runny. At this point, check for seasoning, adjust the salt level if needed, and you're ready to fry them off. I'm starting off by heating my cast iron pan on medium heat, and I'm lightly going to brush the surface with a little bit of oil. Then simply ladle some of that batter on the pan, and using the back of your ladle or spoon, you're going to gently spread that out. This is a little more finicky than the regular dosa batter. However, just be gentle, go slow, just till you figure out the consistency of the batter. These also won't spread as thin as a regular dosa, but do the best you can and they'll cook off really quick anyway. You know the crepes are ready to flip when the top is no longer too tacky. It has sort of dried off. At this point, I just drizzle a couple of really tiny drops of oil just so that it doesn't stick to the pan and it cooks through well. And then simply flip over. If the crepe seems like it's too delicate, just let it cook for a little while longer before you attempt flipping it. Let it cook off on the second side as well for a little while. Now, like you can see here, I've not got too much coloring on it. It's just a very light hint of golden brown on both sides. I don't know if you can tell that through the video, but that's what you're looking for. Then carefully take it off the pan and you're ready to serve up. In this manner, continue cooking the rest of your crepe batter. As it stands, you may need to add a little bit of water to get it to the same consistency because it has the tendency to thicken up with time. Also, I would strongly recommend frying up all of your crepes at one go. the longer the oat batter sits, the slimier it tends to get. If you've ever tried making oat milk, you'll notice that that's a problem that you encounter even there as well. Now, typically a dosa is served along with some potato bhaji or almost like a stir fry. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for our oat crepes today. So I've used the rest of the potatoes that I bought this week. So I've got 3 little potatoes and I'm going to peel them and chop them up into small cubes like you can see here. Pop these in a pot on some medium heat, and to this I'm going to add some hot water from a recently boiled kettle. This just speeds up the cooking process. Season with a little salt and let it cook off till the potato has completely cooked through. While the potato is cooking, all I've done is I've chopped up half a large onion, and I'm also going to chop up some fresh coriander, leaves and stalks. Once the potato has cooked through, simply drain off that water and you're ready to start assembling your potato bhaji. In a pan, I've put in about a spoonful of oil. Now to this, I'm roughly going to add in about a teaspoon or so of mustard seeds. Once the mustard seeds heat up and start crackling, you can see they've started popping a bit over here. I'm now going to add in a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Make sure you've got this on a medium heat, give it a quick stir and immediately go in with your onions. Stir that through and you're going to let the onions cook till they've softened and just ever so slightly started developing a little color on the edges. Now I'm going to add in a few chili flakes to taste and then add in about 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric powder. My turmeric powder is extremely potent, which is why I'm using a smaller quantity. If you've got a milder variant of turmeric, you can add just probably a tiny bit more. Don't go overboard with the turmeric because it tends to get a little bitter if used in excess. Give everything a good stir, and I'm just going to put in about a tablespoon or so of water to deglaze the pan and to prevent the spices from burning. Next, add in your boiled potatoes and stir everything through to incorporate the spices. Season with a little salt to taste. Remember that you had boiled the potatoes with a little salt, so go by taste over here. And to balance out all the flavors, add a tiny bit of sugar. I'm using about 1/2 teaspoon. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of lime juice. Again, I'd say about a teaspoon or so. You don't want this too tart. You just want to balance out all the flavors. Stir everything through really well. And lastly, add a little sprinkling of some fresh coriander chopped. Give it one last stir and your potato bhaji or aloo bhaji is ready to serve. I served these up with some of that leftover lentil patties and I had a little bit of curry left over. I've just reheated both of those and served this up. I got about 6 crepes from 1 cup of oats. Welcome back. We're now at day 7 and today I'm going to keep things really simple by making a dal rice combination. Here I have 1/2 cup of those red lentils. I've just rinsed them through fresh running water at room temperature a couple of times and I'm simply going to boil this. I'm using my pressure cooker. If you don't have one, you can just boil it in a pot on the stove top with sufficient water. Add a small amount of salt. I've added about 1/3 teaspoon here. And a little bit of turmeric powder. I'd say about 1/4 teaspoon or so. And now simply cook this off till the lentils are nice and tender. Every pressure cooker is different, so follow your manufacturer's instructions for best results. Now while the dal's cooking, I've got a few things prepped over here. I've got 1 tomato that I've split into halves and chopped finely. I've got some freshly chopped coriander and about 1/2 an onion that I've finely chopped. I'm going to make a little pico de gallo sort of salad all over again. Now in India, this is called kachumbar. Typically onion, tomato, you can also add cucumber, some amount of chili and coriander go towards making this salad, and it's very simply seasoned with some salt and lime. Once your lentils have cooked off, if you're using a pressure cooker, let the pressure drop naturally, and when it's safe to open up your pressure cooker. I found that this dal was a little too thick for me to process further, so I'm just going to give everything a good stir and add a little hot water from a recently boiled kettle till I get the consistency that I'm happy with. Now we're just going to add some flavorings and spices to our dal to finish it off. In a pot, I'm going to add in about a spoon of oil. To this, I'm going to add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of cumin seeds and a good pinch of asafoetida. Now, while this is not essential, it does add a huge amount of flavor. So if you can get your hands on some, go ahead and add it to your dal. And then immediately go in with your onions. You don't want these spices to burn. They can burn really easily, so keep everything prepped before you start cooking. Stir that well, and you're going to cook the onions till they're nice and soft and translucent. But I typically use fresh garlic for it. Since we didn't get any this week, I'm just going to put in 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder,
1/2 teaspoon of Kashmiri chili powder or any other mild chili powder.
Stir that well and add in your boiled lentils. Stir that through, and once it comes to a boil, add in 1/2 tomato that we had chopped up earlier. Now you can at this point adjust your seasoning, you can adjust the consistency. I find that mine is a little too thick, so I've added in just a touch more water, and I'm just going to let this simmer off for a few minutes. This next bit is optional, but I'm going to add some of that frozen spinach just to up the nutritional level of this dal. I'm just going to go ahead and use whatever's left in that packet. Stir that spinach through and let the dal simmer for another minute or two, just so that everything warms through. And now we're finally going to add our finishing touches. In goes 1/2 teaspoon of garam masala powder and some chopped coriander. And that's it. Your dal, or dal paalak in this case, is ready. Turn the heat off. You're now ready to serve. Serve this up with some rice, some of that kachumber or salad that we prepared earlier, and you've got 7 days of meals from that grocery haul that I shared with you at the start of the video. So we're at the end of that week. Let me quickly take you through the things that I've got left over after that week of cooking. I've got about 1/4, I'd say, of this little pack of oat milk. I did use some for my tea and coffee through the week. I've got 1/3 of a jar of that passata left. I've got just this little bit of lime left. I've got about 3 onions left and another 1/2 that's in the fridge. 4 spring onions, just a little bit of those lentils, about, I'd say, maybe a 1/4 cup. A little portion of the spiral pasta. And I've got a fair bit of rice. In addition, I've just got a little bit of oatmeal left over and a little portion of the frozen veg. That's about it. I think this week went by pretty well. Went by better than I expected, at least. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got a few ideas that you can take away with you. If you'd like me to do a few more videos like this, leave me a comment and let me know. So I won't keep you here any longer. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you really soon with another delicious recipe. So till then, take care. Bye.